Happy May. It's May 1st, or as my wife rolled over this morning and said, it's gonna be May. Happy Friday. It's May 1st. See, I know the date today. I know it's Friday. I always know when it's Friday. That's not going away. Quarantine, you can't beat us. Hey, coronavirus, I know when it's Friday. I don't know why I always look forward to Friday, even during these last 8 weeks, but I love my Fridays. Why? I guess because I don't have to deal with customers, clients, or anybody for like 2 days, and we get to goof off as a family. And hey, that's fun for me. But we got a great show for you today. It's been one great week, and we're excited to go. So let's jump into some news. We're going to try to keep this good today and positive because Thursdays around here are pretty brutal. Having to always have the unemployment rate drop on us, and then we've got the General Flynn thing, which that just seems to be a mess all by itself. So, you know, President Trump stated, and we've had Josh Phillips on, this is going to be a good one. President Trump speculates that the China virus was released accidentally. Well, Josh actually broke that a few weeks ago on our show, which is pretty awesome to, you know, we already covered this. So, hey, we're doing pretty good that we can cover that topic as we go. Oh, look, I'm making it better for you guys. I look really orange, though. We need to fix that. Sorry, we're doing this on the fly. Whoa, that's worse. I live in Oregon, so there's no way I'm this tan. We're just going to go with this. You're all going to deal with me looking like I have dysentery today. But that's what we're going to do. But anyways, President Trump speculated it came from China. We've always said that. Even our guest this week, Colonel Michael Lewis, who covered the SARS outbreak when it hit our country, hit the world a few years ago, also speculated this was completely an accident. We did not believe this to be an act of war. I know some of our friends in the media wanted to speculate that, oh my goodness, this was done on purpose, and they did this to affect the entire globe. A little difficult to do when China also depends on making money. So that would be weird that they would shut down everything and try to take it over, because that's just not how this wonderful thing works. People probably should lay off wearing the tinfoil hats. And speaking of tinfoil hats, did you see in the news earlier this week, the Pentagon released UFO videos? So all of our tinfoil hat wearing friends who watch Independence Day one too many times were running around going, I told you so, because there's new video released from fighter pilots following UFOs. So that leads us to say, so are there UFOs? Are there not? Where do you lean on that? Do we have UFOs? It was just very interesting to see. We've also seen a continued conversation coming out. We'll jump right into sports, because let's talk about positive stuff. It's Friday. I'm so sick of talking about coronavirus. Although that is funny. Just the song in general saying coronavirus. Every time you say it, just think of that. Go to TikTok if you don't know what I'm talking about. But let's talk about sports. The NBA is in serious talks right now to finalize the rest of their season playing at Walt Disney World. So you could put all 26 NBA teams there, use the facilities they have. The players are online saying what hotels they'd like to take over while they're there. The Milwaukee Bucks joke that they like to take over the Polynesian because they want to have the jungle atmosphere. Those guys are the rowdiest bunch you're going to see, with the Greek Freak being their leader, the headliner for the MVP this year in the NBA. I think it's great to see that these leagues are starting it. NASCAR jumped the gun yesterday and announced that they are going to have their first race May 17th. NASCAR leading the way with their first event May 17th. It's in Bristol, and there will not be an audience, which we figured that will be fans. The NFL also is talking about moving their season back. On other things, talking about NBA, the NBA did release this idea of, due to this, that they actually want to start the season later. Now, if you're an NBA fan and have followed this, the NBA has always secretly wanted to move their season closer to Christmas time. Truly competing in October with the NFL season in full swing. That's usually when we already know the Raiders and the Jets are done for football for the season. College football, and you throw in baseball, usually having some amazing teams in the World Series and heading that way, to come out right before Halloween to have your season start, it's really difficult. So what they're talking about doing is following what Mark Cuban and a few others have been on TV talking about, running the season starting late December and taking it all the way into June and July. As we all know, if you watch baseball, it's great to watch, but seriously, 162 games, it's okay if they compete with a few people in the beginning of the season. That goes for hockey. We haven't heard much out of hockey. Major League Soccer, we're going to bring Jeff Attila back, the goalkeeper for the Portland Timbers. He's going to be back on next week. We're going to talk a little bit about what he's hearing coming from the league there. It's all interesting. I know we all are missing sports. We have amazing documentaries that are on there and how we're biding our time. I don't know about you guys, but the documentary that I'm behind is Last Dance. But I recently turned on the Beastie Boys documentary that is on Apple TV, and it's simply amazing. Something about that old music, something about the Beastie Boys. It's done in a live documentary form, so you have the two remaining Beastie Boys on stage talking about how they grew up. And it brings up an interesting point, as part of the negative things that we've seen in the news is the reoccurrence of the Me Too movement with the accusations against presidential hopeful Vice President Biden. As we've seen, he's been accused of crimes. He came out today, and I'll give Biden one thing for sure. He came out and he convincingly had a statement of coming out against his accuser, which was good to see. We've had so many guys take it down, wrongfully taken down. Guys like Harvey Weinstein that the media wants you to almost feel sorry for, had a heart attack in prison. Biden came out. But one thing that you've seen is the guys in the Beastie Boys, they come out in the documentary. What I love as a father of two beautiful daughters is they come out and say songs they did earlier in their career they were embarrassed of, especially the song Girls from License to Ill. They were so embarrassed about it, they swore they would never do that. In fact, they're ashamed to hear their kids play that song. Interesting perspective as we all grow up, right? As we get older and we sit there. So it's funny to see bands you grow up on it, such as the Beastie Boys, talking about, oh my God, we put this song out, we thought we were great. So if you have Apple TV, go check that out. It is a phenomenal documentary if you love music. I'm really into music, so that's what we've been sparing our time doing around here, is watching that documentary. I went back and actually caught the Defiant ones, which if you're not watching the Defiant ones on HBO, that was fabulous. It's a story of how Beats came around, and Dr. Dre and Jimmy Iovine created Beats, and it tells their story of they're both amazing music producers. If you love music and you love the best folks, this documentary is awesome. Short story before we jump to our guest, they actually talk about how the idea for Beats headphones, a multi-billion-dollar company that Apple acquired a few years ago. They talk about how Jimmy Iovine was running down the beach in Malibu, and he was going to Dr. Dre's house, and he pulled up on his patio, and they were just going to drink. And Dre was having a hard time mixing some sound bites that he was trying to put together for an artist. And he was just out on his patio doing it. And he had thrown he's like, I hate these headphones. So him and Jimmy off of that created Beats. So artists could wear them, and you've seen them. They're viral. You've seen Bose headphones come out and compete with that. If you remember a few years ago in the NFL, same, everybody's wearing them. So great documentaries if you're looking to pass your time and get a little knowledge into music. You can only take so much sports and so many murder documentaries. I officially could be a serial killer now. I've learned so much from watching all the mistakes all the other killers have done on HBO shows and Netflix. There's a lot of them out there. So watch good TV or get outside if you're allowed to go outside. That is one thing. We have about 2 minutes to go before we jump to our guest. Yesterday, Governor Newsom in California stated that he was shutting down the beaches and state parks in the state of California. Interesting enough, the city of Malibu last night and then several other cities along the beautiful California coast voted to not follow the governor, and they're going to keep their beaches open and their parks open because they depend on that. If you've ever been to beautiful Huntington Beach or any beach in Southern California, there's a lot of small businesses there and amazing food. Those folks, they're sick and tired of being in their house. The numbers are ridiculously low in Southern California right now. So they want to go and be outside. Telling Southern Californians to stay inside is probably one of the most difficult tasks you're going to be able to do. It's like keeping people in the Pacific Northwest inside once July 5th hits because there's no more rain and the sun is out until October. We do not like being kept in our homes. So it's interesting that we're going to see this more of a rebellion as we get into May, and people are seeing the 38 states that have started reopening as of today. So that leads us to, it's time to get to the point. Oh, look at that. So our first guest today is Sandra Possing. Sandra is a life coach, speaker, and entrepreneur, and she helps her clients unleash their inner badass. I love that. That's like my favorite thing. I was like, inner badass. Yeah. So how are you doing, Sandra?
I'm doing great. I was wondering actually before we got on here, I was like, are we even allowed to say badass on the show? I should probably find out.
There you are. Trust me. If a Marine is the host, badass is the least of the bad words they should be worried about that I'm saying.
I love it.
And next week, just so everybody knows, we just confirmed him. Rudy Reyes will be joining us. And trust me, he's a human bleep button. So I'm going to have to I put him on the radio once, and he was the first person that my good buddy Eric Deem ever had to dump from an interview because he just dropped an F-bomb on live air. It was like, Rudy, you can't do that. So Rudy Reyes will be joining us. But no, go ahead and say whatever you want. So you're helping folks unleash their inner badass. What does that exactly mean?
So I always kind of want to give a little credit where credit is due. So I'm in the personal development, the self-help industry, obviously, and two of the greats or two of my favorites, love them or hate them. One of them is going to always be Tony Robbins. He certainly kind of set the stage for a lot of things. And he had a program called Unleash the Power Within. And then one of my favorite authors of all time, Jen Sincero, wrote the book, You're a Badass. And so as much as I would love to take credit for, the concept of unleash your inner badass is just my own thing. A lot of it came from this idea of just letting out the strength and the potential within you. So a little shout out to Tony Robbins, little shout out to Jen Sincero, who I met once at a book signing, and I fangirled so hard it was embarrassing, but also really, really exciting and inspiring to be there with her. But really, unleashing your inner badass to me is about connecting to that part that's within all of us, right? It's our inner strength, it's our self-belief, it's self-love, and it's letting our potential out. I work with mostly the sensitive types. So I work with a lot of introverts and empaths and like highly sensitive women who they're super motivated, they're ambitious, they're go-getters, they're high achieving, but they're also so sensitive. And so to me, it's really important to connect them to their inner strength. And so to me, it's like watching these kind of, big dreaming, big hearted, amazing women, but who are totally holding themselves back and they're just getting in their own way. I work with some men too, but mostly women, and watching them unleash their inner badass. It's like they go from this, smaller, kind of quiet, kind of shy version of themselves to this very powerful, kind of wild woman version of themselves. And it's absolutely amazing to watch.
That's awesome. Truly, inspiring. It's good to unleash your inner badass. I know we had Lisa on the show last week, and she was talking about the Marine mentality. Obviously, I identify with that. The whole adapt and overcome. She spun it and used the Marine mentality. Same thing in our little world. But it's interesting you say that. So let me ask you. We've been dealing with being stuck in our homes, just doing our best. I guess it's great if you're an introvert. But for us outroverts who want to be out, I miss going to restaurants, movies, bars. I just like being outside. I actually miss traveling aircraft. I never thought I would miss going to a conference, but I actually miss going to conferences. It's weird. What are you telling folks to kind of keep their head up during this tough time?
Oh man. So, for everyone, a lot of it has to do with knowing what you personally need, right? So I'd say there's lots of guidelines and ideas out there that can help for, most of us, but we're all unique, and so whereas for most of us, things like self-care are going to be super important, maybe getting more sleep than we normally would, things like that, and staying in, for the extroverts, especially getting lots of social contact virtually through Zoom, checking on family and friends. For us introverts, yes, it's easier to just kind of stay home because we're used to it. But really more than anything, it's about knowing what you personally need. So like, that's what I'm always coaching my clients on, is for them to know who they are, know what makes them tick. I also work with a lot of empaths and highly sensitive people, which means that we wear our heart on our sleeves and we feel all the feels like really, really deeply. And so my empath clients, they feel not only their own, stress and anxiety and whatever's coming up, but they feel the weight of the world. They'll be, crying their eyes out for somebody on the other side of the planet because they just read a sad story or a heartbreaking thing. And so for the empaths and for all of us, but especially those who are a little bit more sensitive, it's so important that we are boundaried, that we set some boundaries around things like how much media we consume, and also that we up our self-care. To me, the ingredient, like when this all first started, the first week, I was kind of just a hot mess. And then I had a week to kind of get my bearings, and I tightened up my self-care a little bit. I put up some boundaries. And then since then, I've actually been doing really, really well. And I still feel all my feelings, but I let them out in really healthy ways. That's something else I always teach my clients, is to feel their feelings. This is kind of a gross metaphor, but gross metaphors are really helpful. They help us understand it. I think so. Think of like you've got like an open wound on your arm, and that wound is kind of like you having your feelings. And so much of us, I think in society, we're taught to stuff our feelings down, bottle them up, don't show emotion, that's weak, blah, blah, blah. But the problem is, just like a wound needs to be cleansed and get some air and cleaned, and then, you put a fresh Band-Aid on there every day. That to me is like allowing ourselves to feel our emotions and to let them out and move that energy in really healthy ways. But when you don't do that, it's like, you look at this wound and you're like, that's disgusting. And you bandage it up and you never want to look at it again. And then every day you think about looking at it and you're like, no, that's gross. And then it just kind of festers. And then we just ignore it more and more and it gets worse and worse. So for everyone, I really encourage people to feel their feelings and allow those emotions to come out, but just to do them in really healthy, nourishing ways. And for those of us who are empaths, introverts, and highly sensitive, it's even more important that we let them out. Like even just before I hopped on here, for example, I had a 2-minute dance party, which is a great way to move energy.
I want to have a 2-minute dance party. We should start the show with a 2-minute dance party. Great. We're doing that starting next week. 2-minute dance party. They're like, oh, great. Eric's got another bad idea. That's what we do around here. Bad ideas. TikTok's like my new addiction. I could get lost in TikTok. It's fun to get lost in TikTok, right? You're just like, hey, I'm in TikTok. So it's great. You bring up talking about distancing. It's funny, media distancing yourself. We've had several guests on the show over the last week, and that's been something that I've taken away from. Is people putting their phones down and stop digesting so much media. It's hard. You turn it on. I mean, working in the media, I can tell you the number one thing that they're all doing is 24/7. I mean, the fact that 6 weeks ago they're like, hey, we're turning off some of our programming that you're used to replace it with 24/7 news coverage. Yep. And you're just inundated with politics and you're just kind of beat down, right? You've got an election on top of a coronavirus on top of just drama. And you're like, I just want normalcy in my life. So that's sound advice. So what's your advice on like fitness? I'm a big Peloton user. Shout out Peloton. Big Peloton fan. What do you think about people combining a little bit of physical fitness, getting their butt off the couch, stop watching the Netflix, and besides getting your mind right, kind of mixing in some physical fitness?
Oh, I love that. As a former fitness professional, I was a boot camp instructor and personal trainer for about 7 years in San Francisco back in my 20s. And it's still just a huge part of what I'm all about. I feel how big of a difference it makes to me. I'm also married to a CrossFit coach. And right now we've got more or less a CrossFit gym in the garage, and we're in there for 90 minutes a day doing our thing. But my thing is always, it's not about you have to do CrossFit or you have to do yoga or swimming or Peloton or whatever your thing is. Kind of like with like what I was saying before, it's important for each of us to find what works for us, so really checking in and being like, what do I actually need right now? A lot of people, given the stress and the anxiety and how crazy their life is trying to homeschool and work from home and juggle all these things and take care of themselves, like maybe they used to love going out and, I don't know, training for a marathon every day. But right now, what's going to be most nourishing is actually to do some restorative online yoga or something. So I encourage people absolutely stay moving and to find the things that are going to work for you personally. But it's also, I'm sure some people would love to be going to like a fancy Pilates studio every day or going to their favorite boxing gym every day, but you do what you can with what you have where you are, so right now we're at home, we have limited access to things. So we do what we can, we get creative, we think outside the box. But the most important thing for me is just to, get your ass up and moving in some shape or form every day, again, to move that energy and move the emotions for our physical health, but also for our mindset. I'm such a nerd on mindset stuff, and exercise is what I found to be one of the most consistent ways to stay really on top of keeping our mindset sharp too, especially in uncertain times like these.
I love that you said that, because one of the phrases that I've been using is discipline over distraction. It's very easy to sit down and do absolutely nothing. It's so easy. It's so easy to get stuck in this depression side of the house. And instead, nope, I'm going to get up and I'm going to do it. Getting on. And it's, again, CrossFit community, we've been part of one. They're amazing. Same thing with Peloton. Whatever community you're part of, I love these group settings, and Peloton reminds me a lot of CrossFit. And both communities are very much the same. They both tell you really fast that they do it. So shout out to CrossFitters and Peloton people. That's what we do. But I think that's a big thing, right? Discipline over distraction. And I know you've covered that. It's amazing that we kind of run the same wavelength there. So before you go, tell everybody how they can get a hold of you. We've been sharing your links in the feed, so we have them there, and they'll be on the YouTube when we're done here. But tell folks how they can get a hold of you and learn more.
So I'm super easy to find. As far as I know, I'm the only one of me with my name. It's a pretty unique and unusual last name, and I'm the only Sandra Possing. You can find me anywhere, most of the social media platforms. It's always going to be the same /Sandra Possing. My website is sandrapossing.com. I'm on all the social medias. I haven't quite made it on a TikTok yet. I need to sit down with like a 12-year-old and get a tutorial before I understand how it works. But all the other social medias, I'm there.
So, thank you so much for joining us. Have yourself a great weekend. We got to have you back on real soon. I absolutely loved our conversation today. So have a great weekend. We're learning, man. It's Friday. This is all positive stuff. Get your mind right. So speaking of get your mind right and getting legally right and answering some business questions, our next guest, we're kind of moving around here on our guest chart in case you're playing along and following the ticker going, Eric, you're out of order. We want to make sure everybody's set up first before we jump into stuff. So we're going to go to our next guest. We're going to move around here, but we're going to talk to one of my favorite people to follow on social media. We always are commenting on each other's stuff on Twitter. So you should go follow us on Twitter for sure if you want to be entertained. But I'm going to bring Rachel Brenke. I'm probably screwing up her name and she'll correct me like everyone does. Brenke to our show. Rachel is a taco-loving, dog-rescuing, coffee-drinking entrepreneur from the East Coast. Awesome. I guess. I'm on the West Coast, so I guess yay, East Coast. She has spent over a decade helping entrepreneurs legally protect, market effectively, and strategically implement their businesses. She's not any other lawyer. She is not any other lawyer. She is very unique. She brings legal and business strategy and advice. I could speak English today, I promise you. From a perspective that comes from a multi-biz owner and a passionate entrepreneur herself. She is also, not that that's just the only thing she does. Not only does she do that, like, I don't know what's up with our guests. Y'all do you guys are like the most talented human beings ever. She also hosts the Business Bites podcast. And that is a short form podcast where busy entrepreneurs can find quick and valuable education. So basically, the goal is to grow your business in 10 minutes an episode, including topics on legal, business, marketing, and strategy. Their tagline is, don't put off business education due to lack of time. Something that we've all had a lot of the last few weeks. This is a great podcast that you should be jumping on and listening to. It can help with your business, big or small. If you're a small business owner, I cannot stress enough to go check out this podcast. She also is an accomplished book writer, or author, as we like to say. Her latest book, The Laundry List, is a real-life practical guide to balancing family and business. Rachel walks you through the setting realistic and flexible goals, choosing a workspace, balancing household chores, and organizational tips to get your business rocking over and over again. So, who better to learn this from than somebody else in perfect way? Rachel, welcome to the show.
Hey, how are you guys?
It's Friday, and I get excited for Friday no matter what. Right? I mean, it's Friday. You got to be excited for Friday.
I am excited for Friday because it gives me more Twitter time.
Yes, Twitter time is important. So how have you been during this? You're a mother of 5, if I read this correct.
Yeah, it's been, I call them children of the quarantine for a reason. It has been something. Homeschool is going.
Homeschool, yes. Isn't it lovely? Ours are teenagers. So we've dealt with week 1, it was, I'm bored. And now they're homeschooling. I mean, my son, they're off on Fridays. I mean, I think they have to read for 2 hours and do PE. So apparently to a 13-year-old that's playing Xbox, which is new to me. And
whatever.
And I feel like my daughter, I love her to death, but I swear all they do is like, they did PE. They do TikTok videos and Snapchat and those things. But it's just like one big chat. It's a very interesting world to watch these homeschooling kind of shenanigans. But let's not focus on the negative of homeschooling because that's stressful enough. I didn't sign up for this, by the way. I was like, I'm good at being a Marine, love law enforcement. I did not sign up for this other stuff. No.
Well, what's funny is my kids are actually wanting to start their own YouTube channels and podcasts and all that. So I think we're going to move into doing multimedia and PE, and that's going to be it. I
mean, that's where we're at. I mean, this show came from this whole idea. I mean, I was sitting with my daughter when I first started. She was very, she's 15 going on what feels like 25. And she was like, Dad, the news is so depressing. She even saw it kind of beating me down, saw me having to go like put myself in a timeout from just ultra bad, news. And it's, it's just something that we just can't do. But let's talk about small business loans. Hopefully, let's talk about. Let's get into that, because business owners, and you specialize with small businesses. So let's talk about small business loans. I saw today that JP Morgan has done over $50 billion in loans in like 3 days. But I wonder how many of those are going to big businesses. I mean, and what's your thoughts on all these big businesses
primarily
these small loans?
Well, I mean, I could sit and rant for that for hours, because I think the fact that the small business definition is 5 employees or less. You want to structure your business. So if you're a franchise, but each of your franchise locations is an entity with less than 500 employees, that's considered small business. You have these publicly traded companies that are also less than 500 employees. So they're fitting within what the definition of the SBA and the CARES Act allowed for all this relief. But I don't really truly believe that that's small business. Small business is the mom and pop shops. It's the moms who are at home watching kids, trying to work their online businesses. Like, I've been running my law firm out of my office for the last few weeks. It is the restaurant down the street owned by the couple who they're just trying to put food on their own table. And so, and that's how we connected, is just, I am so beside myself in the way that these companies like Ruth's Chris, Shake Shack, and all of them, they played the system, and I don't completely begrudge them, because when all this came out, the SBA just said small business, here's the definition you can apply. And they're lawyers, because unfortunately, not all lawyers are ethical, or they want to be cunning. And, honestly, they were just doing their jobs for these organizations, for these companies, these large behemoth corporations. But then what happened is the banks are also looking out for themselves. And so it's essentially us mom and pop shops, are standing in line waiting for the money in a system that we've already paid into, and we pay exorbitant amounts of money into. But the big companies are walking right past us, and they're going to the front of the line because SBA delegated, and this is specifically for the Paycheck Protection Program, EIDL, that's a whole other separate issue, but they're essentially, the banks are pushing the little people aside and opening the doors and calling in the big folks. And why is that? Because the banks are just the pass-through and processing and everything to the banks and giving them the money. But the banks aren't doing this as a charity. They're making money. So the larger the loan that they can write, the more money the bank makes. A mom and pop shop like myself may only be asking for $25,000, not $25 million. And so which is the bank going to choose? The one they're going to make more money on.
And that's true. And I know you and I went back and forth on Twitter talking about our friends, the Los Angeles Lakers, with their $5 billion net worth, taking a $5 million loan and then want us to clap for them because they paid it back, which is funny that people keep thinking this is some reward system that they're paying back. And I know right following that, our next guest is another business owner in the restaurant field. So I can't wait to have his insight into this. He just had an amazing article in the Wall Street Journal that we're going to share in our feed. But it's so alarming that these big businesses are bullying small business owners. They're getting to the front of the line with these bots, and they're like, oh, we repaid it. Well, nobody gets access to that money. So great for you, but the only reason you repaid it is A, you got caught.
No.
B, it was bad PR and you needed to. It's just, I'm ashamed that the government just kind of let it go. And they're like, oh, if you don't return it by May 7th, we're going to sternly shake our fist at you on TV. There's no consequence. People will still go to Shake Shack because at the end of the day, the unfortunate part is that most Americans are like, oh, whatever, it's fine. But not for me. Ruth Chris, you're gone, and we love Ruth Chris. Shake Shack, I really love you. You're gone. Anybody who's on that list, That's why we want to support small businesses, and I preach that all the time. Stay local, support those folks. So anyway, sorry to go on that rant, but I mean, before you go, kind of, how do you feel about somebody like the Lakers? Yes, we're under 300 employees, but we're worth $6 billion. I mean, what's your thoughts on that?
I think there's a lot of other issues than look at an organization like the Lakers. How are you really under 300 employees, or 500 employees was the max for the SBA loan stuff? And it makes you wonder, are they properly classifying workers? They probably have a bulk of their workforce are contract workers who right now are not getting paid because they're not working. They have no benefits. So it makes me wonder if there's more to the problem than them just being a large company that gets this money. It's you really only have 300 employees. How much of your staff, all of your support, are all contractors? You're not providing them any benefits. Are they abusing, and I use the term abuse not in like a physical way, are you abusing the system in not providing these workers during normal times that work for you? You're classifying them as a contractor. Are they actually treating them like independent contractors, or are they just now reaping the benefits of not having to pay different unemployment? So just for me, it's just a tip of the iceberg. And like I said, I don't completely begrudge these large corporations. I mean, I'm not going to be going to Ruth's Chris anytime soon. I mean, we're not going anywhere. But, you know, it really was on the SBA to get a better definition to, you know, that list that we saw put out. I went through there and was astonished at how many people were publicly traded and things like the Lakers. You're telling me my two office law firm downtown compared to the Lakers Stadium? Come on now, which one's a small business? But guess what? The government and SBA allowed for them to apply. Can't fully begrudge them. It just makes me wonder, though, how these companies are fitting in that definition. And what can we do about it?
I'm with you on this. It is amazing. I'd love to have you back on. If you'll agree to come on every couple of weeks and we could just talk about small biz, so business owners know where they can get good tips. If you wouldn't mind, I'd love to have you on. I can talk to you for a full hour episode. Unfortunately, the other guests are like, dude, I want to go on too.
I know. They want to get to their Friday.
I know, but you are awesome. Thank you so much, Rachel. Tell folks before you go how to get a hold of you. I can tell you don't use the website that you're currently seeing because you are not.
No,
we'll fix that and get the right one. But
no, that's fine.
It's
funny. Like Sandra said, I'm the only Rachel Brenke in the world. So you just Google me. You can find me everywhere. It's on the websites, that link, as well as all social media. I'm super active. It's not hard to get a hold of me. So feel free to reach out, and especially if you have questions about PPP, EIDL, and everything else that's going on right now. Twitter's going to be your best bet because that's where I'm having the biggest conversation. So come join me and Eric over there.
That's where we're at. Thank you, Rachel, for coming on. I can't wait to have you back on. Have yourself a great weekend.
Thanks. You too.
Thanks. Whew. That was a lot. I was taking notes. It's a small business owner. It's amazing. Still, I know we beat this drum constantly about these loans that are going to these big, gigantic companies. So, speaking of that, let's bring on our next guest. A little bit about our next guest. Besides being from Rip City, which is a beautiful thing to be from, long as you love Portland. So in case you don't know, I know some of you East Coasters have no idea what that means, but that just means you're from Portland. Rip City, you know, that's the best basketball team on the planet. And yes, we're boycotting the Lakers, but we've been doing that since 1970 here in Rip City. But Kurt Huffman is our next guest. Kurt is a Portland boy through and through. After earning his master's degree in law from the University of Glasgow. I mean, come on. I mean, really? University, Glasgow. He moved to Lyon, France. I'm screwing this up, I'm sure. Where he and a business partner founded a brewery and gastropub called. I'm not going to say that word because I can't pronounce it. I can't say it, so we're not going to do it. By the time Kurt left France and came back, it had grown to 5 locations. He returned to the States where he consulted for cruise lines and got his MBA at UC Berkeley. Shout out to the Cal Bears. Before settling back in his hometown of Portland, Kurt in 2008 founded Chef's Table with the mission to open culinary concepts geared toward the visions of individual chefs. He was recently featured in April in the Wall Street Journal. The topic was our restaurants can't reopen until August. Welcome to the show, Kurt Huffman.
Thanks. I appreciate it. And I apologize for my background. It's so much less impressive than your other guests, but I'm hiding in my mom's basement because she's taking care of my 4-year-old.
I'm hiding in the basement. I love it. But, so how have you been? Obviously owning a restaurant, being in the restaurant business is probably one of the most difficult times you probably face right now.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, I I don't want to suggest it's more tough than other industries, but we're at the epicenter of it. We were shut down on the 17th by the governor. We actually elected to shut down on the 15th, a couple days before, because we just felt like we knew what was happening and we wanted to get ahead of it. Yeah, it's terrible. I mean, our future is kind of being decided for us right now. And I think we're in for 12 to 24 months of the most difficult time that our industry has been through for as long as anybody can remember. I mean, every single element that contributes to our industry is going to be upset in some capacity, and we're going to have to figure out how to run our businesses fundamentally differently than we have before. And I think that'll only be for a year or two, and then hopefully we'll go back to normal. But this next year to 2 years is really going to be a gigantic pain.
Ask you, Kurt, when it comes to getting back to normal, and on the show for the last few weeks, we've been talking to various business owners, and we all have the consensus that the normal that we used to go, and those of us who live in food cities, such as the
Right.
beautiful city of Portland and San Francisco, and of course, I'll give a shout out to New York, we're foodies. How's it going to change? What do we expect when we do get to go back and enjoy restaurants? When it comes to social distancing, I mean, what is this 25 capacity that we're seeing quoted out of Texas by their governor? I mean, how's it? What are we to expect when we go back to normal?
Well, I'll tell you, the 25% capacity is a fiasco. I don't know how the economics work. We're a business that's built essentially on seats, right? That's the revenue driver. You have a seat, and a person sits in it and they spend money, and that is literally the index that you build your financial models off of. So when you're saying that only 1 out of every 4 seats can be occupied, I mean, you have to rethink everything. So for us, we're very, very concerned about our sit down restaurants, especially our nicer sit down restaurants. Right now I don't see a path for us to be profitable while those kinds of occupancy restrictions are in place. I have more hope for our fast casual concepts, so kind of sandwich shops, grab and go concepts where we can still maintain a pretty robust delivery infrastructure. But we have really nice restaurants that are more steak focused or more French bistro focused, and that food just isn't meant for to go. So we're very concerned about probably a third of our portfolio and whether it can make money or even break even when these occupancy restrictions are in place.
It just blows me away. I mean, my heart goes out to all of you folks in the restaurant world. I mean, the servers, all those folks that depend on the income. The fact that if we take away and go to 25% capacity, I mean, you don't need all the staff that you had originally, and these nice steakhouses that we all love to go to in exclusive dining. It's heartbreaking. How have you and your group responded to your employees and everybody that's working for you, the folks that truly depend on the tip money and the foot traffic?
Well, we closed, and our first priority was getting everybody on unemployment because we needed them to be safe. And that took us about a week because we closed before everybody else. We were kind of first in line with our employees, so that was an advantage. And then we subsequently dealt with all of our debt, all of our landlords. You just kind of triage through everything you have to figure out when you have literally zero income. And then we started building our to-go programs, which had to be new because they're contactless, right? So you're supposed to have a driver that comes up and you figure out a way to just hand them around the door a bag of food. And so you're never in face-to-face contact. So we've held ourselves to a very high standard, certainly much higher than the grocery industry, for instance, in trying to make sure that we continue without putting our employees at risk. But it's, for our employees, it's a real peculiar time, right? Because we start our people at, nobody earns with tips less than $15 an hour at our restaurants. And so for that $15 or $16 an hour employee, which would be amongst the lower paid employees, they're currently making significantly more on unemployment than they would be when they're working for us. So that's what I wrote my op-ed about, and it's a real odd situation, because usually I like to think that my interests and my employees' interests are aligned to the extent that I offer them enough money to make the job worthwhile, right? That's kind of the contract that we have with one another. And right now, I can't offer them enough money to come back to work because they're getting paid almost $8 an hour more by the federal and the state government. So we're in this really weird period of non-alignment. And that'll go on until July 31st. So we're just trying to think, do we wait till August 1st to open? Because that allows our employees to maximize kind of the benefits that they get through the state while also keeping them safe. Or do we try to open sooner, which there's a certain economic incentive to do that because we're paying rent. We can't defer things forever. So it's a real weird situation. And we're just trying to navigate it.
Well, it's amazing. I'm at a loss for words. I mean, I'm just sitting here and I'm like, my heart breaks for for everybody. It's a difficult situation, right? As a business owner, you want to open your doors. You want to serve the public that wants to go to your fine establishments. Trust me, you have a reputation here in Rip City that is second to none. And it is difficult. I've talked to several business owners who keep telling me, Eric, my folks make more on unemployment than they do coming to work anymore. Right. So it's hard. Like, how are we going to get them to go? And these are people in the construction field who have jobs that they've bid on, and they depend on these jobs so they could get paid to keep their own lights on. And it's just turned into this mess. And I think, and I don't want to get political at all. I just think some of these governors haven't really given a clear path to your business, or especially in the restaurant industry, right? I mean, you're sitting here and you're ordering food, but what are we all griping about? I mean, the number one gripe for some of us is like, well, by the time it gets to me, my food's cold or nasty, or right? It's like, I want to go out in public, but you've got the goodwill police out here yelling at you to put a mask on if you're out in public. So there's no fine line. I mean, and before you go, we got one last, little question for you. So where do we go from here? What is your guys' plans moving forward to set a positive light? How are you driving to be the tip of the spear?
Well, what we're planning to do is everything that we're going to talk about in terms of preparing for opening has to do with earning and confirming the public trust and our commitment to their safety. I think a lot of the plans right now to reopen are doing so in a pretty hasty fashion, where, for instance, places are currently planning to reopen before there's widespread testing available, and they're kind of avoiding the obvious, elephant in the room, which is that you're going to have employees like they just had in Texas. There were 15 employees that work for Chick-fil-A that tested positive at the reopened Chick-fil-A's down there. So you're avoiding the inevitability that something like that will happen. Either an employee tests positive or was in contact with somebody. And irrespective of whether you think this is a real risk or not a real risk, or what the mortality rate is, the reality is that it's a thing, and the dining public is worried about it. And if you can't test your people, if you go through the thought process, in the game theory of what you do, the only thing you can end up doing before there's testing is to close, because you can't test your employees. You can't guarantee their safety. You can't guarantee the safety of your guests. So if you open before there's testing, you have to be willing to confront the reality that you may have to close back down to allow everybody to self-quarantine. So what we've been working on are strategies of how, prior to testing be available, where we can open. And the only one we figured out is to work with 2 different teams that never see each other. So we have a 4-day-a-week team and a 3-day-a-week team to run our restaurants. And that seems to be the only way to assure that, worst case scenario, right, we are open half of the week. But, these opening plans need to be conscious of that. And so that's our principal concern right now. And we're excited to reopen. I mean, that, we serve people and we take care of people, and that's kind of in our DNA. So I'm very anxious to get to it, but I don't want to do it until I feel like I can protect my employees and reassure them that, that they and I are once again aligned about their safety, about their wages. And if we're doing that, then we're also protecting the interests of our guests, who ultimately pay the bills.
Well, Kurt, I want to thank you for coming on today. Your insight is truly incredible. And our thoughts go out to you and everybody on your team and all your employees having to deal with this fine line, right? Being an ultimate leader. You are a leader, my friend. Coming from a military background, I can tell you, you scream leadership. That's what a true leader is. You are worried about the people to the left or the right of you and your customers. You have this fine line that I don't envy you, my friend. But we are behind you here in Rip City. I can't wait for your doors to open. We'll be the first in line, especially for a steak, because hey, other steakhouses decided to take money and got caught, and they don't deserve our business. We'd rather come give you our dollars any day of the week. So you've got me as a customer, and I'll bring a whole bunch of business to you, my friend. So thank you. Before you go, tell folks how they can find out more about yourself, and if you're in Rip City, how they can order.
Well, the name of our restaurant group is Chef's Stable. It's like a chef stable or a chef's table. And it's a play on words that we use. We provide stability to chefs. We work with a lot of chefs, like a stable of chefs. And it's like a chef's table. But at chefstablegroup.com, if you Google us, we're on the internet. We have 20 different restaurants here in Portland, a catering company, bakery, and some other things. And yeah. And by the way, go Blazers.
Always Rip City, baby. Thanks, Kurt. Have yourself a good weekend. We'll have to have you on real soon to catch up.
I appreciate it. Take care, man.
Have a good weekend.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
There we go. So we're up for our final guess as we go into Friday, and they say that you saved the best for last when it comes to that guest being a Marine. That's true. I'm laughing. We have a little bit of a lag here that I'm noticing. Entertaining. But our next guest, I'm excited for our next guest. It's Marcus Haney. Marcus Haney is the founder and president of Haney Enterprises. When he's not doing that, he's the program director for Allegiant Giving. A little bit about Marcus. He was born and raised in Roseville, California. So if you don't know, now you know. The 916 is my backyard where I grew up. So having somebody from my hometown on is outstanding. And he's a brother Marine. So this just gets better. Marcus has always been powered by competition and team camaraderie, which is why he chose to join the best branch in the whole wide world, the United States Marine Corps. He joined in 2009 while serving in his 4-year enlistment as an 0311 or as an infantryman in the beloved Marine Corps, the best job you can have in the Marine Corps, with 1-7. He's been deployed 3 times. As a squad leader, he was responsible for his Marines and served on numerous missions. On June 6, 2012, in the southern part of Afghanistan, coined the bloodiest place on earth, Marcus was shot in the right leg by an enemy combatant. I'm glad that they put it in the notes in such a friendly way, because I was going with a whole nother word to describe the person who shot him. It's probably not good. See, that's the problem. We have Marines reading about Marines getting shot. We get kind of angry about it. After being evac'd out of the zone, he underwent 5 surgeries and months of intensive recovery at Balboa Naval Hospital down in San Diego in the Wounded Warrior Battalion. Marcus received the Purple Heart for his actions on the battlefield on that day. A little bit about him: as a program director and Allegiant Giving that exists solely to drive enrichment for the local community in the Sacramento and Northern California area to help develop future leaders. Their focus is on the advancement of youth sports programs and military veteran services, which we're going to jump into, because as we all heard yesterday, the Little League World Series was canceled for the first time ever. So it's good to see these communities putting youth programs and veterans first. So without further ado, my good friend and United States Marine, Marcus Haney.
Thanks for having me, Eric. Appreciate it.
Man, you got the longest bio in the world, bro.
I wasn't meaning to do that. And you didn't have to read it all. You're supposed to paraphrase, right?
No, I didn't want to. I got to give you love, man. A Purple Heart is no joke, and you got it in combat. You know, a lot of people, they get Purple Hearts and they won't tell their story, and they're like, oh man, it's like usually an embarrassing story is usually what I find from some Purple Heart recipients that I talk to. But talking to you and several other Marines I know, getting the Purple Heart in the Corps, especially as an infantry guy, they don't pass that out like candy. Dude.
I got the story to share with the audience sometime for sure.
Oh yeah, well, we'll have you back on. We'll have war stories. We'll have you on a Thursday when it's all hoo-ha and oorah stuff that we go on. We had Mike the Cop on yesterday, and Jason Piccolo, who I think he's done every job that you can do in military and in the civilian world. Like, that's a guy who could make you disappear and make sure you don't even know that you exist. So anyways, so let's talk about it. So you went to the Corps, you served.
Yes, sir.
You came home you got a permanent cool mark to go with you. I love marine humor, right? You got a permanent scar to remember your service by. And it's not just your oorah tattoo. And you came back and you founded Haney Enterprises. Now, you and your dad do have a show, and you guys are kind of the who's who in the Sacramento area when it comes to helping entrepreneurs. I mean, we'll talk about your dad's podcast later on before you go, because we'll give him some love because he's one of my favorite people to listen to, and he's a motivator. But we're talking about you. So you came home and you started this, and then you started this Allegiant Giving. What's up with coming home and starting putting veterans first? I mean, what kind of drove you to do that?
Well, I'm taking my dad's lead on this thing overall. My parents started the Allegiant Giving Corporation while I was active duty in the Marine Corps back in 2010 while I was overseas to really help veterans get back to normality. You and I both know as veterans of the Marine Corps, it's a challenging time to get back into civilian life and figure out what that next phase of your life is going to be. So I started a company, just ran into quite a few veterans who were looking for that next thing to do in their life. And honestly, I believe that entrepreneurship is the way to help our economy grow, and especially during this challenging time. You mentioned that the Little League World Series got canceled for the first time. This is unprecedented time. So I took it upon myself as a person who likes to lead from the front to take charge of the Allegiant Battle for Veterans program, empowering today's heroes to become tomorrow's leaders. We have a 10,000 square foot space out at McClellan. It's a former military installation where we teach folks in cybersecurity, coding, Salesforce, and we also help them start their own business and become entrepreneurs. And we run a program called Service to CEO, in which we partner with a great organization called the Rosie Network that we're so blessed to have on the team too.
So how is it being, you're talking about tech and getting people into coding and vets in NorCal. When you think of Northern California, you always think of the Bay Area, right? And the heart of the Silicon Valley, the tech mecca. How is it getting training up in Sacramento, which I think is a beautiful community? I know everybody kind of calls us the cow town, but it's not. I think that's because Arco Arena used to be way out in the middle of nowhere. Now the beautiful arena is downtown. But I mean, what's it like getting veterans? How's the support and how's the community rallying behind you with this?
Well, I think we embrace the Cowtown a little bit. We obviously want to change the perspective a little bit, but still at every Sacramento Kings game, folks are out there ringing their cowbells. So I think we embrace that to the fullest. But we have a couple military installations here in Northern California that most folks don't know about, being highly technical. So with our specific skill set that we're training in, we're finding large organizations here in Sacramento, which is the capital of the 6th biggest economy in the world, that are looking to have a new pipeline of individuals who have a skill set in which they can leverage to bring into their organization. Sacramento itself, Lewis Stewart, who's at the City of Sacramento in the Innovation Department, is really looking to help Sacramento become one of those next folks to expand the Bay Area presence in the technological space and really help Sacramento shape itself into something that the rest of the country can look at as a gold standard for that. So we're getting a lot of support from both the city, county, the local military installations, and from the overall population of folks who just want to do right by our nation's heroes.
That's awesome, man. I love hearing what's going on in my hometown. I absolutely love your mission. I love everything that you guys are doing, getting veterans together. I mean, it's contagious, right? We want to get veterans together and help them with transition. We have our correspondent, Matt Kuchera. He's on every Wednesday, has a segment called Pivot Point. We're officially calling it that and launching it again on Wednesday. But we're always talking about vet transition. So I'm going to ask you this question because you are truly in the weeds with this. How can veterans do what you're doing in their community, kind of expand this to a satellite. Maybe this is something you guys are thinking of doing, but if I'm a veteran and I'm like, dude, I don't know what I'm doing, you know that feeling, right? Where we feel like we're on an island by ourselves, which is
no doubt
the problem. Even as you get into your 40s, you don't know what you're doing. Now, and this includes everybody, you've lost your job, you don't know what to do. How can veterans find help to find folks like you and other organizations?
That's a great question. And I think that's the piece that is missing from the whole puzzle, especially for post 9/11 GIs, right? The VFW and the American Legion exists for the World War II and the Vietnam era veteran, but there's not that community for folks like myself. So I am actively trying to help build out that community, because I solely exist to help eliminate the 22 veterans a day that commit suicide. I think community and that camaraderie piece is the best way to build that infrastructure. And I think that, you know, as a veteran and other veterans looking to find support or find a group to, within their local community that they can be a part of, you know, it starts by having a conversation with the people that might give you some support. I think it's having a conversation with other veterans and figuring out what it is that the causes that we want to fight for as a younger era generation of veterans that is looking at the workforce in a whole new light. No longer, in my opinion, is the 4-year degree the only way to find yourself into a 6-figure salary. I think if you can find yourself the right skill set and the right way to talk about your military career, you have an opportunity to excel above the folks who are getting out with just only a 4-year degree. And so I think if we can help our veterans walk away from the military with a sense of accomplishment, but also have that path for them to be successful as a nation, I think we should rally around something that builds that community at large and doesn't leave folks feeling like they're out there on an island, as you mentioned, and longing for a friend or some camaraderie. And I think that it's our job as military members, and I love that why you're doing this program here, Eric. It gives everybody an opportunity to share their message and share their voice. And, you know, it's my hope that at one point, like we all say in the military, that we can come together for one fight. And I think that that fight needs to be for our next phase of veterans coming out of the military.
I love that. You know, I always like to say that we're all shooting at the same basket, right? We all have that same mission. I mean, it's kind of a phrase I've been using. Some people who aren't basketball fans get lost in it. They're like, oh, it must be a Jordan thing. I'm like, no, it's kind of what makes we're all shooting on the same basket. We all have to work together. And, you know, and if people don't want to do that, I'm like, you know what? Don't like that. That's fine. You could take your ass home, go back to bed and try again. That's the way I look at it when it comes to that. People need to set themselves up right. And it's good that, you know, you guys you're putting yourselves in the fight and making sure folks know that they can come to you. So before you go, real fast, I think your dad's show is like one of the best for entrepreneurs out there. The style, the guests that he gets, truly, you know, laid back. Guys wearing flip-flops and shorts like half the time he's doing it. So
Yeah.
kind of pump that real fast, and then we'll come back to you, and then we'll close out. We can get you to talk about, you know, how to find you. But let's talk about the amazing show that you guys do, because you're both part of it. So.
Yeah, so my dad runs a show called the Mark Haney Show up here in Sacramento, where he helps entrepreneurs become entrepreneurs. We have an investment portfolio. We have CPAs on staff that can help folks get through this PPP time and need to get some of that capital for themselves. We're doing 4:30 Haney Biz Huddle shows where we're bringing on amazing guests like Rachel you had on earlier, who has a full understanding of the ways that the government is utilizing these small business programs. And we're just here to try to get folks through this hard time, because I think, just like the military, anything else, if you can lead from the front and you look to the left and your right and you find that you have somebody standing there by your side, that this journey isn't so tough. And, we all know that entrepreneurship is, it's a full contact sport. And if we can put ourselves out there and help people, take a hit left and right, but know that they have somebody that they have always by their side, and that's where we come into play.
Sure, I love it. So before we go, tell folks how they can get a hold of you if you're in the 916 or the Sac area, or even outside. Maybe they're outside the nation. They just want to chat with you guys and see what they're doing, maybe come up with some idea. What's the best way to get a hold of you?
Yeah, I say you can email me directly, which I'm sure you can share, or go to allegiantgiving.org. That's our nonprofit organization website, in which we are putting all the news and notes about what we're doing with Allegiant. We're actually revamping our website, so bear with us. But at the same time, you can also just come visit us over here at Granite Drive in Rockland. We have the Haney Biz Allegiant Giving Center, where you come in and chat with anybody about your business needs, or if you just want somebody to talk to about what it's like to become an entrepreneur. If you're realizing that working for somebody is not your gig anymore, and you want to try out something new and maybe put your foot on the pedal a little bit and really help yourself succeed overall, then we'd love to help you get to that point.
Wow. Well, Marcus, I appreciate you. Ladies and gentlemen, Marcus Haney. Thank you, bud, for coming on the show. We need to get you back on. You and your organization are so inspiring. It's great to see people stepping up and taking care of our youth sports programs and our veterans, America's heroes, for damn sure. So thanks, bud. Semper Fi, and have yourself a great weekend.
Always by your side, Eric.
And yes, Marines always say at the end of almost anything when we're communicating. It's how goofy we are. That's our show, folks. It's Friday. Go enjoy your weekend. Crack open an iced tea, water, whatever the heck you drink. If you like whiskey, go hit that wine. Do what you need to do. We have a great show for you on Monday. George Bryant, another Marine. George is back for his segment, jumping in and talk a little bit about marketing and how we can help your small businesses grow during this work from home. It's not going anyway anytime soon. We have from commercial production, Rachel Perkins will be joining us and talking about the film industry and how it has been just decimated by the shutdown. We have, of course, Jen Boer-Cuevas coming back on the show. We're going to talk a little bit about the accusations against presidential hopeful and former Vice President Joe Biden. And we will then have Brian Brandenburg, a veteran whose company just had an amazing product release around helping find a cure and I forget the word, just completely just flew out of my mouth. A cure for COVID-19. We'll have those guests on the show and many more for you next week. We have a heck of a show from behalf of all of our team here at To The Point. From myself, from Butch Seltz, our executive producer, in the control room, the main man himself, producer Chris, and our associate producer and our booker, Madison Mitchell. We thank you so much for tuning in every day. We love you guys very much. Have a great weekend. I'm Eric Mitchell. Be safe, be smart, be strong, and God bless.